That was Who Do You Love by LL Cool J here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and I'm, number one, sorry about the slightly late start today, and number two, we will actually be starting GameBabble Live proper after the news. Because, well, two things happened. Number one, it was kind of awkward doing, a couple minutes of GameBabble Live, then breaking for the news, then coming back to GameBabble Live, especially with how depressing the news can be. And number two, I have been advised that maybe I should talk about something other than video games, which completely goes against the show. So I've decided, in this little in-between period between, when I get in and have everything set up and when the news and then show proper starts, I will discuss other things, because, of course, the central goal here is that I would love me a job in broadcasting, and I'm, learning the ropes, getting used to things, proving myself, and so, yes, I should talk about topics other than video games. The problem there, though, is that, unfortunately, the world may well be a little bit too political these days, and in a roundabout way, that may actually wind up being the subject of this section. You see, thanks to the magical powers of the internet, I have been able to talk with people all over the country and all over the world. I have friends in Australia and Hong Kong and beyond. One of my friends is currently working for a car company in Japan. All sorts of people all over the world, talking to them, and in general, in a lot of conversations, especially when talking with new people, there has been a thing we call the bar rule, which is that there are two topics you do not discuss: religion and politics. Now, why don't you discuss religion and politics? Well, because these are some of the most important topics to many people. They're absolutely vital to some. Wars have been fought over religion and politics. And so when a discussion gets too political, it can get, rather heated. And there's been a little bit of a problem there, because unfortunately everything is getting more political, and that's a darn shame. Because after getting to know some people, thanks to the implementation of this rule, I've been able to hear interesting and, different stances on topics that I thought I had a pretty firm opinion on. But, you gotta get to know a person before you start really shooting off politics everywhere, and this is becoming increasingly, a problem, because the world these days is just too darn political. You see, there's one horrible, horrible concept that I absolutely hate, that I have heard a million times over now. Quote, unquote, the personal is political. Followed by its good friends, you can't stay neutral on a moving train, and we are all political beings, probably my least favorite. The idea behind all these phrases is that everything you do is political in some way, shape, or form. Every step you take, every breath you make, every move you make is political. And yes, I know about that reference. And it's very... there's a degree of truth to it, but it gets a bit ridiculous, because it's like... whether you drink Coke or Pepsi is political. What time of day you wake up is political. If you arrive to your job on time is political. The grades you get are political. The school you go to is political. All of these things can be considered political. And not doing anything is also considered political. Literally everything can be considered political, in a convoluted, roundabout, and absolutely stupid way. There comes a point where you just have to put your foot down and say, yes, but no. Because, yes, every action you make has a ripple effect. It has consequences that spread out and, in one way or another, has some kind of vague political ramifications. But when you follow this kind of idea too closely, to the letter, you wind up making your life a waking nightmare, because now you become afraid of making the wrong choices, saying the wrong things, supporting the wrong politics. And that's one of the other problems. The idea of the wrong politics. We have spent so much time vilifying our political opponents, the people that we disagree with, that we often look at them as enemies out to ruin our way of life. If we look at them in such horribly negative ways, and that kind of sentiment is only increasing in America, and that deeply bothers me. As I mentioned earlier, thanks to the internet, I have met many people of different political stripes, and though we did not talk about politics initially, and we kept heavy political discussion to a minimum, you never knew when they would, sort of in passing mention something that they really care about, like gun control, and you might have a completely different opinion on it, but actually hearing what they have to say, you realize, oh yeah, that's right. These people are human beings. They have a reason for thinking what they think. They aren't evil. They have their reasons, and far too often we overlook those reasons, and we just group people into good and bad, and that's not how politics works. Politics. That's not how politics work. It's not how it's supposed to work. It's not good versus evil, for crying out loud. But unfortunately, we have spent so much time in this quagmire of polarization that it can be hard to do that. So that's why when I do my show, GameBabble Live, I do my best to keep politics to a minimum or out of it. There's tons of political topics I could discuss when it comes to video games. There's lots of people who desperately want to politicize video games, of all things. And yes, there are games with political overtones and implications and critiques. But there is a difference. There's a difference between, implementing some political critiques in your story and making flagrant propaganda. It's all a mess. And so I desperately try to keep that out of my show, because it annoys everyone, myself included. I think far too many people are trying to politicize it, and I'm going to be the change I want to see by removing politics from my video game discussion for everyone's enjoyment. And interestingly, I can't make any guarantees, but this might wind up being the topic of these before-show segments. This may well be the gel anti-political message of the day or something. I'm not entirely sure. And again, it's not like I'm saying, screw politics altogether, because you can't. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, politics are a part of our daily life. We do have to care about them, because they do affect how we live, what policies are put in place, and how that affects us. So yes, you have to care about politics, but there comes a point where things just get ridiculous, and you have to call it out. I say this might actually be what this section is about, because I just realized I've got an idea for our topic for next week already, and I have a strange feeling I'm going to keep finding interesting points where politics just don't belong. So, there you go. That was your gel anti-political. We'll come up with a better name later. I'm not exactly the best at naming things sometimes. Case in point, before it was GameBabble, I called my brand Fruity Jello Gaming, and that was a mistake. But speaking of mistakes, we will have GameBabble Live shortly after noon. So, getting back on track, I'm going to kick you back to the music with I Ain't the Same by Alabama Shakes here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. At noon, we will have the news and the weather, a short break, and then GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday, a little afternoon, until 3 p.m. We will open, of course, with the new video game releases for this week and what's coming out next week, as well as what anime are in theaters, and there's a bunch right now. So get excited for that, and yeah, I hope you stay tuned. But until then, here's I Ain't the Same by Alabama Shakes here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you. Currently, it is 33 degrees here on the campus of Florissant Valley Community College. I'm Jell with your noon news update. A man is dead after a shooting in an apartment complex. Police say a man is dead after he was shot in the parking lot of an apartment complex in North County. It happened yesterday evening near the Oak Park Apartments in the 11,000 block of Estrada. Friends of the 23-year-old victim drove him to the Bellefontaine Neighbors police station for help. An ambulance then took him to the hospital where he lay. Anyone with information on the shooting is asked to call police. Pilot body cam program is in effect in Chesterfield. Most police officers in Chesterfield are now equipped with body cameras. The department started training officers last week on the new body cameras. The pilot program is free of charge for now, thanks to the manufacturer, but at the end of the test run, the department will decide if it will keep the cameras in the long term. Chesterfield police office officials say the cameras are there to promote transparency, accountability, and protect officers. And in St. Charles, a woman is facing charges after she was allegedly involved in sex trafficking at a St. Charles motel. Lauren Force is being charged with second-degree sex trafficking of a child. Police say she assisted and benefited from the sex trafficking and prostitution of a 17-year-old girl. The hotel room where the prostitution occurred was in Force's name. In the national news, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders says we're going to see, quote, a lot of the president's heart in his first State of the Union address tonight. While appearing on the Today Show this morning, Sanders said President Trump will speak on national security and immigration. The big speech will happen before a joint session of Congress sometime after 9 o'clock Eastern Time. House Speaker Paul Ryan says he's in favor of publicly releasing a memo that allegedly details surveillance abuse by the FBI. Ryan told reporters today it's important to know if civil liberties were being violated. The memo reportedly outlines overreach of a surveillance program used to gather intelligence on the Trump campaign in regards to the Russia investigation. And schools across the country are closing due to the flu, with so many teachers and students becoming ill. Schools in at least 12 states have canceled classes for a few days. While the schools are closed, crews are moving in, cleaning and disinfecting classrooms. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention says there are 39 states with especially high flu activity. And Tom Brady seems to be forgiving a Boston radio host who insulted his young daughter last week. In an interview with CBS News, Brady says, quote, sometimes we say things that we shouldn't say, or we make mistakes, and that happens. You move on. Asked if he's ready to put the comments behind him, Brady said, quote, life's too short. Amen to that. Moving on to the weather. Today it is partly cloudy, a high of 40 degrees, low of 31. But good news, tomorrow it'll still be partly cloudy, but we'll have a high of 56 and a low of 35. And then it gets a little colder on Thursday, high of 40, low of 15. Friday, it's going to be sunny, but high of 32, low of 26. And then Saturday, we'll have some morning rain or possibly snow showers with a high of 46 and a low of 21. Moving on throughout the week, it's looking like temperatures will be in the 20-30 degree range with a whole lot of cloud cover. But not in the news, but I think well worth mentioning. Today is going to be what do they call it? Oh, not today, this evening. The first super blue blood moon since 1866 is just hours away, according to weather.com. What it is that it is a lunar eclipse, a total lunar eclipse. It is a blue moon, which is actually the second full moon in the year, and it's a blood moon because it's going to be red, and it's also a super moon because it's going to be big. That is quite the combo there. It'll be best for people on the West Coast, and probably worse for people on the East Coast. Pretty much it says the total eclipse is beginning around 4:51 a.m. and ending at 5:29 a.m. So, for anyone interested in that kind of a thing, be awake early tomorrow to catch the super blue blood moon. Because, well, that's quite a thing, and thankfully it will only be partly cloudy here, so we should be able to catch at least a little bit of that. But they did mention people on the East Coast are going to have sunrise shortly after 5:51 a.m. But still, there you go. That concludes our news and the weather for today. We will kick you back to the music with Ravages by Facing Infamy, but please stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, because after that, we will start GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from around noon to 3 p.m. So please stay tuned and enjoy Ravages by Facing Infamy here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Ravages by Facing Infamy here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and this is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from about noonish to 3 p.m. with a sort of opening discussion around 11:30 with me. Anyway, we like to kick the show off with what games came out this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. So let's get this started. Today, on PlayStation 4, Bricks 2 came out, along with Call of Duty World War II The Resistance, I assume that's an expansion, Cold Iron, a PlayStation VR game that's described as being sort of a shootout mixed with Punch-Out style game. You're a Wild West gunman traveling through time, and you're getting into various pistol duels. It's kind of a boss rush thing. Also, Dissidia Final Fantasy NT has come out, so that's a thing, along with EA Sports UFC 3 Champions Edition, which has horrible microtransactions. I don't think they've changed that. I need to look it up, but I saw a lot of EA Sports bucks on the PSN store when I was checking today. Moving on, Feral Fury, which is a top-down, twin-stick-looking shooter where you play as pandas in armor with guns, for some reason. Out of Ammo, a very interesting-looking PlayStation VR game where it's a real-time strategy game, but you can also hop into your various troops and play as them. And that sounds like loads of fun, and I can't wait to get my hands on that. Also, Railway Empire, along with Striker's Edge, which I think is some kind of, like, fantasy soccer or dodgeball game? I don't know. Also, the Pierhead Arcade, again, a PlayStation VR game. This time it is literally like an arcade at the pier where you walk around and you can play skee-ball and whack-a-mole and things like that. It's a bunch of goofy mini-games. It looks like it can be played multiplayer, maybe. I don't know. Those kinds of games are kind of a hard sell after Rec Room, though, even though it does look kind of fun. Also, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, The Diaries of Agent Silent Death, which I assume is more DLC expansion, and Wolverblade. And tomorrow, Frutakia 2 comes out. And the day after that, Restless Spirit. And the day after that, the 2nd of February, will be the regular edition of EA Sports UFC 3 and Nightmares from the Deep 3, Davy Jones. Moving on, Xbox One, what you getting? Xbox One is getting A Semblance, EA Sports UFC 3 Champion Edition, Railway Empire, and Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, The Diaries of Agent Silent Death, along with Wolverblade, and then EA Sports UFC 3 Regular Edition, Nightmares from the Deep 3, Davy Jones. Moving on, Nintendo Switch is, not today, but in 2 days. So, on Thursday, it will be getting Eterno Blade, which is a side-scrolling Metroidvania-ish game that has been ported to literally freaking everything. It was originally a 3DS game, then it got ported to Vita, then it got ported to PS4, and now it's getting ported to Switch. There might be an Xbox One release for all I know, but yes, that's coming to Switch now. I mean, why not? I think there's a sequel in the works, actually. So that makes, why not? If you can release it on the Switch, release it on the Switch. Also, Her Majesty's Spiffing is coming to the Switch, which I think is kind of an adventure game, maybe? Island Flight Simulator, Night in the Woods, Shiftlings Enhanced Edition, Skyforce Reloaded, which is an enhanced version of a mobile shmup, and SteamWorld Dig, and then after that, on Friday, Mad Carnage comes out, which looks like a car combat-ish looking game. And on PlayStation Vita, Time Recoil is coming out today. Moving on, next week, PlayStation 4 is getting Armored Warfare, Dandara, Mercenary Kings Reloaded Edition. Oh, and Shadow of the Colossus Special Edition. That's something to get excited about. And is that... Yeah. And then on Friday, Under Night In-Birth EXE Late Est, which is the newest version of Under Night In-Birth EXE Late, which is a really, really good high-res 2D anime-style fighting game. This one adds in, of course, a bunch of new characters, and is the first PS4 release of the game. It took a little bit for it to get a US release, but it's going to be here now, and a lot of people speak very highly of it. It is from the makers of Melty Blood. It's Studio French Bread. I just think the character designs are really bland. Also, on that same day, next Friday, The Seven Deadly Sins Knights of Britannia comes out. Based on the Seven Deadly Sins anime, it looks to be an arena-style fighter, which I'm currently looking a little more into, see what the deal is there. Because I always wonder who's developing each fighter. Anyway, Xbox One next week is getting Dandara, Marooners, and Mercenary Kings Reloaded Edition, along with, on the 7th, Die, Little Triangle, and Pinstripe, and then Bleed 2 on Friday. Nintendo Switch next week is getting Dandara and Mercenary Kings Reloaded Edition. And then on the 8th, Aegis Defenders, Epyrion Cyberstorm, Atomic Run Gun Jump Gun, and just Disc Jam, and then a port of Dragon Quest Builders on Friday. Disc Jam, by the way, is like a 3D fan successor to Windjammers. It's been on PS4 for a while. Good to hear that it is getting a Switch release, though. 3DS next week. It didn't get anything this week, but next week, 3DS will be getting the Nintendo Selects release of Super Mario 3D Land, The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds, and Ultimate NES Remix, all Nintendo Selects releases. And the PlayStation Vita will also be getting Under Night In-Birth EXE Latest. Oh, you gotta love these names. Anyway, now that we have those out of the way, those are our new game releases, let's talk anime, because, there's a lot of anime in theater. First and foremost, Mary and the Witch's Flower is still at the mills at least until Thursday. So if you have not seen it and you want to see it, it's there. It's from a new studio called Studio Ponac, which is made up of a bunch of ex-Studio Ghibli members. And oh, buddy, can you tell. And I sort of get where they're coming from, because of course Hayao Miyazaki has been trying to retire and can't seem to retire, and he's never really been pleased with his studio without him. And these people are like, "Yo, we're gonna prove ourselves. We're gonna split off, and we're gonna try to be, and we're gonna try to show that we can do it on our own." So yeah, that is still at the mills until Thursday. So today, tomorrow, Thursday, that is there. It might still go on for another week. Who knows? And it might be at some other theaters, but that's all I could find. Anyway. After that, tomorrow, the 3rd and the 4th, Cardcaptor Sakura the Sealed Card, which is the old Cardcaptor Sakura movie, will be put in U.S. theaters for the first time. Obviously, to tie in with the fact that there is a new continuation of Cardcaptor Sakura currently airing in Japan, and you can watch it on Crunchyroll. So that's a thing. And yay, so old Cardcaptor Sakura movies going to be in theaters. That's great. Also, Digimon Adventure Tri-Loss will be in theaters February 1st. Digimon Adventure Tri is actually a continuation of the old Digimon TV series, with Tai and Sora and TK and all them. Yeah, that one. It's Digimon Adventures Tri is an OVA series about them pretty much after they've gone to college. And it's Loss is, I guess, the latest entry in it. So it's not really a movie, but it'll be in theaters anyway, February 1st. And then on February 5th and 7th, Eureka 7 High Evolution will be in theaters, subbed on the 5th, dubbed on the 7th. And then Mazinger Z Infinity will be in theaters February 11th and 12th. And that's one I'm most excited about, because it's freaking Mazinger Z. It is the super robot. I looked up the trailer. It looks fantastic. Can't wait to watch it. And this is all just nuts, because if you think about it, you could watch a new anime movie in theaters starting today for like the next 3 days. You go theater today, see Mary and the Witch's Flower, and then tomorrow Cardcaptor Sakura the Sealed Card, and then day after that Digimon Adventure Tri-Loss. Why not? Other than time and money, because I'm sure these are all Fathom events and probably cost more than regular, except for Mary and the Witch's Flower. That's like a normal release. Whew. So that concludes our new game releases and anime in theaters report. Thank you so much for that. Moving on, we've got all sorts of video game news information, which will be coming back at you at about 12:30-ish. But until then, we're going to take a break until 12:30-ish with This Is How We Do by Ilphonics here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more GameBabble Live here on 89.5 FM. That was Donk Dat by Da Wild Boys here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday now from noon to 3 p.m. Once again, I'm your host, Jell, and now that we have gotten the new game releases and anime in theaters out of the way, again, there is a ton of anime in theaters right now, so if you want to see something, go look it up. Mary and the Witch's Flower, Cardcaptor Sakura, Digimon Adventures Tri. We got stuff happening. So, very exciting. Also, Eureka 7 and Mazinger Z. Anyway, so now it is on to video game news. What do we have? Well, first of all, Monster Hunter World. People are very happy. Hey, Monster Hunter World is actually probably the most accessible and playable Monster Hunter game ever made. Still a little on the obtuse side, but cripes, it's so much more enjoyable for me. I wonder if it's going to piss off longtime Monster Hunter fans. Like, seriously. Because this is very different from how Monster Hunter has been. Perhaps not too much, but enough that I do wonder if it's going to be, if it's going to piss off the longtime fans. But anyway, Monster Hunter World may add a character re-edit option if there is enough fan demand. Spoilers, there's enough fan demand, so they need to add it. Why? Well, they really enhance the character creation in Monster Hunter World, and when you're making your character, oh, egad, does your character look gorgeous. They use these amazing-looking character models. Just absolutely freaking gorgeous. And you can make an amazing-looking character. And then you start the game and your character looks terrible. This is a thing I really deeply hate. When you have a character creation system, but you don't actually get to see your character that you created in-game because it switches to a lower detail model. What is the point? The model that you get to edit in the character creator is never used, as far as I know, in the actual game. Even if you're playing on PlayStation 4 Pro, they don't use the model in the character creator. It is only in the character creator. So what is the point of having this model there? Why trick the player into thinking they are making a better looking character than they think they are? There are a ton of comparison screenshots all over the internet, and it is one of the big complaints because as someone who does a lot of character creation, where that is a selling point of a game to me, I understand. There are people who are spending hours upon hours trying to create the most fantastic character that they possibly can, something truly unique to them that fits with their style and aesthetics, and then they start the game and they look completely different, and they're like, what in the entire crap? Wouldn't be the first time this has happened. I remember this happening with Oblivion, actually. But, yes, there are a lot of people who are like, can we re-edit our characters because they look freaking terrible in-game? And yeah, I think they should definitely do that. Speaking of things people want due to fan demand, the Secret of Mana remake is just about here for PlayStation 4 and Vita, and the people who made it were interviewed, and they were like, hey, why isn't this getting a Nintendo Switch release? And they said, oh, well, that's just because we started development of this before the Switch was announced. If there's enough fan demand, we will. Spoilers, there's enough fan demand. This actually became a massive topic of discussion when it came to this game, to the point where some websites had to just utterly ban discussion of it, because nearly every conversation about the Secret of Mana remake would devolve into, why isn't this getting a Switch version? Which makes perfect sense. The game is coming out on Vita. It is not a graphically intensive game. That means the Switch can run it no problem. The Switch is way more powerful than the Vita. And they just released this Secret of Mana collection in Japan for the Switch, so it's like, why not the remake? Why would you release this collection in Japan and then not the remake on the Switch? And yeah, I've seen discussion threads closed because no one would shut up about how much they wanted on the Switch. So yes, you should probably port it to the Switch. Speaking of the Switch, it is important to note that SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy will be released on both Switch and PlayStation 4, but they have just announced that Nakaruru will be in the game, and the preview image shows her as a vampire with a pet bat instead of her usual hawk mama haha. More than likely, we will see many more characters for that goofy game, but yes, Nakaruru has been revealed. But speaking of revealing characters, a couple months back, they actually held SNK held a character design contest in Saudi Arabia, and they designed a new female character named Najd. N-A-J-D. I don't know how to pronounce that. Najd. I'm going with Najd, okay? So they designed this new female character, and people thought the character would be released as DLC for King of Fighters 14, which was surprising because King of Fighters 14 hadn't seen DLC in a while. Then SNK Heroines comes out, and they're like, oh, she's going to be the end boss of SNK Heroines. That does kind of look like what's going on, but I'm not 100% sure, because honestly, that looks more like Kukri than Najd. But anyway, they're like, okay, so she's going to be the end boss of that, right? However, they just announced that, yes, King of Fighters 14 is getting new characters. Oswald, as I mentioned last week, has been revealed as DLC for King of Fighters 14, and there will be 3 other newcomers. Most likely, Najd will be one of them, the only, actually new character. People are thinking Hydern and Blue Mary might be the other 2, and let me tell you, there's a ton of fan demand for Blue Mary. Looks pretty promising. And while we're on that subject, I think I mentioned this last week, but it's worth mentioning again. The King of Fighters Destiny, which is a free web series you can watch on the internet. Just go look it up on YouTube. SNK is posting it on their official channel, English subtitled. They just completed their first season. A second season is confirmed along with a movie, which I'm excited about. I really love King of Fighters Destiny. I've gotten some crap from a friend of mine about it, because he's like, it's terrible and awful, and I'm like, I think it's probably one of the best fighting game TV series, or fighting game series I've seen, except that it's not, none of the episodes are full length, and whoo, boy, they sometimes it takes a while for them to get around to the next thing. Anyway, while we're on the subject of PS4 and Switch, Neko Para is coming to PS4 and Switch somehow. I don't know how. I'm going to assume it's going to be censored. but it's going to have like a new chapter and some bonus features and stuff. To the thankfully uninitiated, Nekopara is it is a visual novel. I would very much hesitate to call it a dating sim. It looked like there was very little actual gameplay in there, or actual choices. But it's a very popular one about being a guy who owns a bakery, and there's a bunch of cute cat girls that want to help you. It is exceedingly popular, and it is getting both a PS4 and Switch release. Okay, not my cup of tea, but whatever floats your boat, Nekopara fans. Moving right along, the new Gundam Breaker game has gotten an English trailer, so could a US release be happening this time? To the uninitiated, get to say that a lot because we're covering such strange games. Gundam Breaker is... That was Into the Fire by Asking Alexandra, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from about noonish to 3 p.m., although the 11:30 point is when I will have just random discussions about how much I hate politics. Anyway, so now that we are back, sorry for the bit of a long delay. I wound up falling down a bit of a rabbit hole looking up various information, as it does seem Final Fantasy Dissidia NT is really not being received well, and I can't blame them. I never really liked the Dissidia games. Dissidia, by the way, comes out today. And I never really liked the Dissidia games. I felt they were wildly overrated, and even hardcore Dissidia fans really hate the new PlayStation 4 Dissidia game. Why? Well, because instead of being a good old-fashioned one-on-one fight, it's these weird 3-on-3 matches. And apparently the only way you can do one-on-one is by doing free battle mode. There's no 1v1 ranked. It is designed entirely around 3v3. And honestly, the entire game has been a mess throughout its whole development, and it makes me legitimately sad, because it's developed by Team Ninja, and I like Team Ninja, and I know they're the ones who are going to take the blame for this, because they're, of course, the major difference. The game technically came out in arcades, like, 2 years ago in Japan, but the roster was microscopic. It was flagrantly a beta. They did not have the core Dissidia roster done. And it sort of sat there in arcades. Like, they did not update it. A lot of people thought, oh, the game came out in arcades 2 years ago, and now it's finally getting a home port. No, they sat on their butts and did nothing. The arcade release got some character updates, but it wasn't until this impending home release that they finally sat down and said, we need to get the base characters in the game. We need to finish the roster. So they did that. And in the middle of, like, showing it off, letting Western players actually get their hands on it, everyone said this is the worst freaking interface ever. Because Final Fantasy Dissidia NT has the most cluttered, confusing, nonsensical interface anyone had ever seen, and they actually changed it and streamlined it before the US release. Before the world release, actually. It came out everywhere about the same time. And that blows my mind. Because it's like, wait, this game has been out for 2 years, and now 2 years later you decide to fix your awful cluttered interface? It's like the people making this game are completely tone deaf. There's a very definite problem with communication. They're like, oh, we're going to do 3v3. It's like, what? Because you want to be kind of like Gundam Versus with its 2v2s? Maybe that's not necessarily such a good idea. I'm not saying don't support it, but they built the entire game around 3v3. And there's no, like, story mode, and it's lacking a lot. It's lacking a lot of things. People are very displeased with Dissidia. I will probably give it a rent, but yeah, a lot of people are looking at it, and they're like, no one's going to be playing this online in, like, a month. Because, yeah, like, you need 6 people to play online properly, And in, like, a month, yeah, you're not going to find those people. Way too many far better fighting games came out recently. It's not as good as the old Dissidias, as many people have said. And I don't even like the old Dissidias. And I'm like, yeah, this doesn't seem as good as the old Dissidias. I'm probably sitting this one out. I've been kicking it around. But no, I think I might sit this one out. I think this game might be a mistake. No offense to the people who love it, but I'm just not seeing a lot of good here. But that having been, admittedly, I only played the beta, but I did pop in the beta, and I did like 1 or 2 matches, and I was like, I'm done. This is a confusing mess, as usual, that I don't really understand and feels kind of shallow, and it looks super fun when you actually have 3 people who know each other forming a team, but that's the problem. You know, playing teams with random people, you don't really want to do that. It's probably not going to be that enjoyable. The whole thing was ill-conceived. And I'm sure that Square Enix is going to go, oh, well, people clearly don't care about the Dissidia series anymore, and they are going to be screaming, because they're like, no, just take the assets from Dissidia NT and make Dissidia 012 Duodecim. In fact, just port that with online play to PS4, and people would probably be happier. And I completely agree. I would give that game another shot if they did a PS4 port of it. Just straight copy-pasted it onto PS4 at like a budget price. I'd be down with that. But, yeah. Also, speaking of Gundam Versus, the Burning and Master Gundams are here for Gundam Versus for all of us G Gundam fans, despite the fact that they said they would never add any G Gundam characters. Told you so. It was the dumbest thing. The Gundam Versus series has almost always had G Gundam characters in it. The previous entry had G Gundam characters. Now they're like, oh, no, we want it to be more focused on long-range combat, so no G Gundam. No, we finally got our G Gundam characters. Thank goodness, please add more. If I could just have every G Gundam mech ever, I would take it. Anyway, speaking of, it also, let me clarify something. Dissidia NT is 3v3 as in you need 6 players to play. 3v3 simultaneous. As opposed to Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is 3v3 tag. It does have a 6-player mode online, sadly not offline. But it does have a 6-player mode online, but no, it's still a 1 versus 1 game. You just have a team of 3. And Dragon Ball FighterZ, oh egad, that has done well. How well? All the lobbies are they were full for the first few days, and they're still at peak hours. They are very full. Then again, there's a reason why this happens. One of the strangest design choices with Dragon Ball FighterZ is that it doesn't have a main menu. Instead, it takes you straight to the online lobby, and the online lobby is your main menu even for playing offline. Do not worry. In case the servers are down or, in the far future or whatever, you can press the triangle button to just go to an offline lobby and play the game fully offline. But yes, they do have it where the main menu, it automatically logs you into an online lobby. Even if you don't have PlayStation Plus, which seemed really weird, but I kind of understand it. Just, this is not the game that needed it. Guilty Gear is the game that needs it. Because I was sitting there like, why would you do that? That's such a weird design decision. And I thought about, like, King of Fighters 14. Very good fighting game, but as many people will say, no one's playing it online. It's hard to find an opponent. Well, that's because no one's clicking the I'm looking for a match online button at the same time. I bet you there's at least 20 people playing it online right now, but they can't, or playing it right now, connected to the internet, but they can't find one another because, well, they don't know they're playing. So, by making it so the way Dragon Ball FighterZ automatically logs you into a lobby, that is certainly a means to let people know, hey, you're about to go over to training mode, but there's another person here who'd like to play, and then now you can ask them to play. That might be a good idea for smaller fighting games. Dragon Ball FighterZ, however, is not small. Oh, buddy. It appears to have sold very well. I went to the midnight launch for it. Admittedly, it was for that and Monster Hunter. And yeah, the GameStop was packed for that. And yeah, I think everyone's playing this, and with good reason. It is a fantastic-looking fighting game. If, in the off chance you're unfamiliar, Dragon Ball FighterZ is not your typical Dragon Ball Z game. Rather, it is a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 style 3v3 classic 2D fighter. But it is simplified just enough that if you're not good at fighting games, you can get a foothold. It has some semi-automatic combos, though they're not stupid like Persona 4 Arenas or, admittedly, King of Fighter 14's auto combos. It has some semi-automatic combos. It's closer to how 3D fighters work with those. And the most complex input in the game, indeed the only special attack input in the game, is just a quarter circle. So learn your quarter circle, and you can do pretty much everything in the game. It is very fast, but yeah, like, at a base scrub level, you can dash at people, do combos, and make big flashy supers happen. And then, like, when you actually learn the game, there is a whole lot to it, but not, like, too terribly much. I think it hits a good middle ground there, and people are loving it. Fights are flashy and fast-paced, and explosive would be an understatement. Fortunately, I'm looking at the time, and I'm realizing we probably need to take a quick break. So, I'm gonna hit you with some music, and then we will get back to talking Dragon Ball FighterZ, the various DLC rumors that are floating around, and moving on from there. So, until then, though, here is Hairspray by Runner Up on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you for listening, and please stay tuned for more GameBabble. That was You Don't Get Me High Anymore by Fantagram here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from about noon to 3 p.m. So, before that quick break, we were talking about Dragon Ball FighterZ and how freaking awesome it is. It seems to be doing very well. I can't wait to hear the sales figures on this one, because generally speaking, like, Mortal Kombat and Injustice have been some of the best performing fighting games out there, and I want to know how this is stacking up against them, because this is really good. I mean, it is Dragon Ball Z Marvel vs. Capcom, pretty much. It actually plays a good bit different, but at the same time, similar enough that that's the best way to describe it. The presentation is astonishingly flashy. Game is super fun. Netcode is rock solid. I'm having a blast with it. But I know one of the big questions a lot of people are going to ask is, if I don't play competitively, is there anything there for me? How's the single player? Well, aside from a really nice arcade, there's two major single player things, of course. There's the arcade mode, and there is the story mode. The arcade mode is actually pretty neat, because it has multiple different courses you can go through of different lengths. And who you fight in those arcade modes is actually based on how well you do in each fight. The better you do, the harder opponents you fight in the next match to get greater rewards. But of course, the story mode would be the central single-player focus. And I will say, I'm very pleased that they actually went with an original story for this game, because we've heard the Dragon Ball Z story a million times in the various Dragon Ball Z games, so doing something original, very nice, good, actually makes it kind of worth playing through. Kind of. I'm actually going to be honest, the core story sucks. Anytime Android 21 is on screen, the new character for this game, which the story mode is actually about, is pure gold for me. But what really makes the game are the completely optional character interactions you can trigger. Let me explain. The central story actually explains why everyone is fighting on the same level, why Yamcha is able to beat Goku and Cell and so on. And that's that there's these waves going out all over the world that's decreasing everyone's power, and they can't even fight at full power unless they have, like, a soul controlling their body in combat. And that soul is you. Yes, you are a part of the story. It's really dumb. And they take an excessive amount of time explaining this dumb thing to explain why only one character fights at a time. There's only one soul to share between them, and you're switching between the different characters. And though the characters can speak, they need you in order to be able to fight. They need to strengthen their soul link in order to be able to fight at full power. And it's really dumb. And meanwhile, clones of the cast of Dragon Ball are attacking the world, and you've got to stop the clones while Android 21 rampages and becomes stronger. It's honestly a pretty dumb story. But Android 21 is a really, really fun character, because her goal is just to turn everyone into food and eat them, and because that makes her stronger, and she really, really enjoys eating that food. She is a delightfully insane, cackling villain. So super fun anytime she's on screen. But what makes the game are the optional character interactions. You see, the way the story mode is set up is you'll see a cutscene and then you'll be thrown onto this sort of map thing. And there's various battles that you can take on, and you have to get through those battles to get to the boss and clear the map. And you have a limited number of turns to go through all the different battles and so on and so on. But the thing is, most of these battles, they're just filler battles. It's just you brawling with some clones. But different team makeups, fighting different clones, will trigger different bonus cutscenes. Like, there's almost always a cutscene when someone fights a clone of themselves, where they commentate on how weird it is fighting themselves and how much better they are than their clone. Different groups of characters, though, can have, different conversations. Like, if you put Nappa and Cell on the same team, Cell will comment on how Nappa's a low-level warrior. He's like, hey, I'm a mid-class warrior. And they's like, oh, I bet you can't even go Super Saiyan. Hey, a Super Saiyan is a legendary warrior. Oh, really? Seems there's sort of a bargain sale going on on Super Saiyans. They do use that line. And so you get that for, if Cell and Nappa fight someone. And then there's one, and it can just be anyone just having Cell and Nappa on the same team. And then you have, the specific combinations, if Goku and Tien are on the same team and they fight a clone Piccolo, they reminisce about the old days when Piccolo was the central villain of the original Dragon Ball, and they comment on how much he's changed, and Goku actually reveals that Piccolo babysits Pan when Gohan and Videl go out. And there's this entire conversation on that. And it's okay, that's wacky. And there's tons of that. And honestly, as you get further into the story, and the more of a Dragon Ball Z fan you actually are, the more fun it gets. Because the story is strikingly self-aware. Every time Goku uses instant transmission, people are always surprised by how fast it is. And kind of how broken it is. And there's even a part where Goku jokes about the fact that he's died, multiple times now. The game, and, the entire concept behind Android 21 is pretty much just Cell and Boo, and they do address this. They're like, oh, yeah, this is basically Majin Buu again. The game almost makes fun of how bad its story is, and that makes it fun, because it's really all about the character interactions. And the funniest thing about Dragon Ball FighterZ is how much the game is almost more Easter egg than it is game. I'll get back to that in a minute, though. I should finish talking about story. The story mode is divided up into 3 arcs. You're supposed to play through 3 different stories. The first is just, the heroes are fighting the bad guys, they're taking out Android 21. And at the end of that, not really a spoiler, Whis pretty much says, hey, what about all these unanswered questions? You should play the other modes. Next one is the villain story, where instead of you teaming up with Goku and friends, you team up with Frieza, that plays out, and it's very interesting. Frieza eventually has to team up with Goku, and there's some delightful interactions and tension there. And then, after you beat that, you get the Android 21 story mode, which sucks. I know I said that every time Android 21 is on screen, the game is absolutely delightful. Unfortunately, the Android 21 story mode's opening half is filler. It is awful. See, in each of these story modes, you can only play the characters that you've rescued. As you go through it, you rescue more characters, they level up and use skills and so on. But each story mode is generally about 4 hours long apiece. Generally lasts about 45 battles if you're rushing through them. Like, that's the thing. I was getting through these story modes as fast as I could. And they generally wound up being 4 hours long apiece, 45 battles apiece. Going pretty much straight to the boss, not bothering to level up. And, yeah, the first two, it's kind of fine. But the Android 21 story mode tries to do that even though it only has half a story. So the first chunk of it just sucks. Because for the first half of that story mode, all you have is Androids 18 and 16. And they're both kind of grappler. 16's a grappler, 18's a grappler / assist character. So I'm not really very good at using either of them. Since you only have two characters and no one to fall back on, that means when they get defeated, you have to start the whole map over again because you can't just switch to different characters while they sit back and heal. On top of that, it is, since you only have these two characters, you can't trigger any of the fun character interaction cutscenes because you don't have enough characters to work with to get those interactions, which literally make the story mode. And on top of that, for the first half of the story, it pretty much just plays the cutscene over and over and over, the same cutscene over and over again. Goes through the same motions every time you beat the boss of Android 21 being like, I can't contain my hunger, and 16 being like, you must control your hunger, and then Android 21 says, thanks, I controlled my hunger. That happens like at least 3 times in a row. I think more like 4 or 5. And and it's annoying, because this is a story that tells you what the real deal is with Android 21. The one that actually explains most of the background of it, of the plot, although there's actually still a bunch of unanswered questions. So this is the story mode that really matters, and the first half of it sucks royally. It is a slog. And then you reach the halfway point, and it gets good. And then it's actually very enjoyable, and I had fun with it, and we got to conclude the story. And this is rather important because you can't play as Android 21 until you beat the story mode, or you buy the character pass, which we will get to that in a minute. So that part kind of sucked. But otherwise, the story mode, I wouldn't buy the game for the story mode, but it's not bad. Again, not because it's not fun because of the story. It's fun because of the optional character interaction sequences and unlocking all of those. There's actually quite a bit more content for me to go back to and play, but it did take me 12 hours going through story mode as fast as I could, but watching the cutscenes. Took me about 12 hours. I'm hearing about 6 hours if you skip all the cutscenes. So, that's where we're at with the story mode. I'm happy it has single-player content. I just didn't like having to get through so much of it to get to Android 21. But as I said earlier, the game is almost more Easter egg than it is game. The sheer amount of just secret things in this game is insane. I mentioned that the best part of story mode was just trying different character combinations and seeing if you can trigger different cutscenes, right? Well, then you have, special intros, if Goku faces Frieza, if they're both the first characters in their teams, and you're fighting on planet Namek, and Krillin isn't on anyone's team, it opens with Frieza killing Krillin and Goku going Super Saiyan. And then, if you destroy the planet, and have Goku take out Frieza at the end with, a strong attack hit, it plays out pretty much the ending of the Frieza saga. If Goku beats Kid Buu on the Kai planet, it plays out the whole, salute thing, I hope you're reborn as a better person thing. It does that. There's a bunch of secret ones, and, apparently there's one for if Yamcha beats Nappa, where Nappa does the KO'd Yamcha pose. So there's a bunch of just hidden bonus things. And then you have the team-ups. Like, you can only do the full family Kamehameha if you have both adult Gohan and Goku on your team. And as long as Goku is... Actually, I don't know if Goku has to be alive or not. He really shouldn't be. But as long as you have Goku on your team, you can do the full family Kamehameha instead of just the brother Kamehameha. So that's only there if you do that. The weirdest one, Gotenks and Piccolo have a team-up when you do the volleyball super. For some weird reason, if you do the volleyball super and Piccolo is on your team, then for the second, bump of that, I guess it would be the set, bump, set, spike. For the set, Piccolo just pops up and goes, volley! And then after the move, Piccolo grumbles and is like, was that really necessary? And I'm like, why did that even happen? And there's just so much random secret stuff, and continuing with that is just the sheer number of weird lobby avatars. Because you can get lobby avatars of characters that are not playable in the game. You can get a Hercule lobby avatar. You can get a Bulma lobby avatar. You can get Yamcha in his baseball uniform. You can get so many stupid lobby avatars. And yeah, there's just so much little hidden bonus content that really makes the game shine. Which is, of course, brings us to the question of DLC. See, as announced before the game even came out, there is going to be a character pass, and there's going to be 8 DLC characters, which you can, buy the pass now. And I decided to hold off on this, because I realized, there aren't that many Dragon Ball Z characters I really, really care about enough that I would buy them separately. So, I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. I've got my Android 21. Unless they want to do something completely nuts, like putting Sorel or Zangya in the game, I don't really care. There's some rumors about Raditz, and I'd pick up Raditz. I like Raditz. But for the most part, yeah, no, the characters I would actually care about and buy are very slim. So, of course, people are trying to hack the game, data mine it, and figure out who the 8 characters are. And there have been 50 different DLC character leaks from the data mine. Because see, here's the thing. Remember how I mentioned they have all those lobby avatars of characters that aren't playable? Yeah. What people are doing is they're going into the data and they're seeing these names and they're going, oh wow, that's going to be a DLC character. But there's no actual proof of that. Because it could just be a lobby avatar, which, admittedly, a DLC character would likely get a lobby avatar to go with them, but there's no sign that that's what's actually happening. And so there's 9 billion stupid DLC leak lists and people going, this is confirmed because it's from data mining. Don't you know how data mining works? And people going, no, you're stupid because you don't understand how data mining works. No, you don't. No one really knows who's in the game. There was a rumored leak, though. Someone said that this DLC pack will live on in infamy and will piss people off because rumor has it there is strong demand in Japan for base form Goku and base form Vegeta, and that they are pretty much confirmed. I would like to point out that Dragon Ball FighterZ already has 3 Gokus and 2 Vegetas. You have Super Saiyan Goku, Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan Goku, and Goku Black. And of course, Vegeta, you have Super Saiyan Vegeta, and Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan Vegeta. So we really don't need base form Goku and Vegeta, but rumor has it there's demand for them, so they might be added in, and people who have already bought the kind of pricey character pass are going to be pissed off when the first characters they get are, oh hey, another Goku and another Vegeta. There's also a lot of rumors about Bardock, which that will piss people off. People are kind of on the fence about 17. Because, yeah, a lot of people really want Android 17, but they're wondering if it's pretty much just going to be Android 18, but with, one move swapped out. I think they're going to do better than that. That's the one thing I will say. Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Goku, and Vegeta actually play radically differently from their regular forms, even though all they did was color their hair blue. Their actual gameplay has significant differences, and I'm sure base form Goku and Vegeta will be very different, but there are so many other characters people would rather have, considering we already have 3 Gokus and 2 Vegetas. We're kind of good. We're kind of good on Gokus and Vegetas. Okay? As it is, 1/5 of the roster is Goku and Vegeta. So we can move on from that. Right now, people are, of course, rumoring that Cooler will be in the game, because Cooler is a highly demanded character. Everyone is expecting Broly. I want to know who they're going to add. I might pick up Videl if they put Videl in there. I would definitely grab Caulifla or Kefla. I'm curious to see who they actually add to the game. Of course, there's a bunch of people like, oh man, I want Jiren and Toppo. And fine, I don't like Jiren. We will see who is actually added into the game when there is time, but my main thing I'm going to say is that this is why I didn't buy the character pass. Because I know there's only going to be 1 or 2 characters I'm going to actually want to buy. Maybe. But we'll see when we get there. But for right now, when you here's a leaked list found through data mining of who the DLC characters for Dragon Ball FighterZ are, take it with all of the salt. All of the salt in the world. In fact, recycle the salt. Take the salt from the people who are salty about the character picks and use that salt to take the release list with many grains of salt. Because no one knows. So that's where we're at with that. Either way, Dragon Ball FighterZ is an absolute blast. By the way, one more thing I have to mention, because realizing this blew my mind. I know I said last week that my team was probably going to be like Kid Buu, Android 21, and Captain Ginyu. Captain Ginyu is really hard to use in this game. I really wish I could use him. But you know who's great? Yamcha. Both Yamcha and Tien are really good, but Yamcha is amazing, as is Gotenks, who I completely forgot about. So my team is actually Android 21 Yamcha Gotenks. And a friend of mine pointed this out, and I can't stop laughing at it. You know who Yamcha is? Yamcha, like, not as in the character in Dragon Ball. I mean, like, what he plays like, he's Wolverine. His Wolf Fang Fist is a Berserker Barrage. It is a better Rekka version of the Berserker Barrage that can teleport behind you, and he has Tornado Claw. He has Berserker Barrage and Tornado Claw. He just doesn't have Drill Claw. Instead, he has a Kamehameha. It's Wolverine. Yamcha is Wolverine. And many people, after actually trying Yamcha, are realizing how just freaking amazing he is as a character. This is Yamcha's comeback. His supers are so good. Because his Spirit Ball super, that's like a full-screen projectile that's like instantaneous. The only thing is Yamcha's not that good in the air, and there's a lot of air comboing going on here. You can do Tornado Claw in the air, though, but you can't do the Wolf Fang Fist in the air. But when you're on the ground, you are in Yamcha's domain. His Wolf Fang Fist is beastly. He's got some... I love that he has, like, for both his standard Ki Blast and his strong attack, are attacks where he leaps back. His strong attack, he leaps back, then lunges forward. And with his projectile, he just leaps back and throws Ki Blasts. And it's like, that's great. So he can just constantly hop in and out, comboing, and he's such a great rushdown character. And Gotenks is just a whirling dervish of fists and elbows. Because his 2 moves are a rapid punch that moves forward, and a spinning attack that can be canceled into itself. You could do, like, weak spinning kick into medium spinning kick. It's kind of stupid. So what you could do is you could kind of just dash in, mash square, quarter circle forward, square, quarter circle back, square, quarter circle back, triangle. And that will combo. It's really dumb, but kind of fun. Because you could just spam like crazy, which is really fitting for Gotenks' character. Anyway, we need to take a break, so next up is Gold by Kiara, here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned. That was Deep Six by Marilyn Manson here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. And also, I can now safely confirm that my laptop battery is losing its... It definitely gets worse over time. Because that laptop battery used to last for the whole show. I know I was doing shorter shows back then, but still, it lasted pretty good, and now it has run out, so I might forget some things. So, before I forget, oh my god, Soul Calibur 6 is coming. Just trying to remember the last three topics I wanted to cover, and they're currently all trying to cluster out of my mouth at the same time. Soul Calibur 6 is coming. They have showed some preview footage. The game is in a playable state, that is for darn sure, as Maximilian has indeed been to Namco Studios and been able to play it. The game, interestingly, is an alternate universe retelling of Soul Calibur 1. That means Siegfried is Nightmare, and yes, when you do the armor break, you do see Siegfried under the Nightmare armor, the way his second player color in Soul Calibur 2 was. This also means, Xianghua is back, Kilik has a Berserk mode, there's a bunch of interesting new systems. I'm hearing very positive things, which is good, because Soul Calibur is a freaking beloved fighting game franchise, probably has the biggest non-fighting game fan base of any fighter I've seen outside of, Mortal Kombat and Injustice. I know a ton of people who don't play fighting games but make an exception for Soul Calibur, mostly due to its gorgeous visuals, fantasy setting, and pretty characters. Like, I knew a lot of ladies that liked them some Siegfried, okay? So Soul Calibur, it's generally been this beloved series that does well, and yet Namco has consistently been snubbing it. After Soul Calibur 2, Soul Calibur 3 was a bit of a mess. Then Soul Calibur 4 was a very early release for the 360 and PS3, and it is one of the most gorgeous games on that system. It was one of the first, big-name fighters to release on those systems. It looked beautiful, and we were all like, this is fantastic. I can't wait to see them build on this, because it was a little short on, stages and certain, bits of content, and so on. So, it was like, I can't wait for them to make a Soul Calibur 5. And then, this was the most embarrassing thing. You skip ahead a little ways, and Namco was announcing 9 billion Tekken games. They had a HD remake of Tekken Tag 1. Tekken Tag 2 was on the horizon. Tekken Tag for Wii U was announced. There was a 3DS Tekken. There was a Tekken CG movie. There was all this Tekken going on. And everyone was like, wow, that's great. So what's about Soul Calibur? And Namco's response was actually, Soul Calibur 4 was the end of the series. We finished it. And people were like, what? And so they made Soul Calibur 5, and it was a disaster. Essentially, they took Soul Calibur 4 and they built on it. And in many ways, they improved it. The netcode was better. The gameplay was faster. It did have more stages. But weirdly, it technically had less characters and less content. And there were a lot of huge mistakes made with the character creation. And the worst part was that Soul Calibur 5 was this big generational leap. It was, let's take out the old characters and replace them with new ones. So instead of Sophitia, you had Fira. Instead of Xianghua, I think you had Linghua. Maybe that was her name. I don't care. Instead of Kilik, you had Jiba. And most strikingly of all, instead of Taki, you had Natsu. Now, I actually liked Natsu, but Taki has a kind of huge fan base. And when Namco just said point blank, Taki is now too old to be in this game, people got very mad. On top of that, though they were using the Soul Calibur 4 engine, I felt the game didn't look as good, because they put less time and effort into the character models than they did for Soul Calibur 4. And here was the other thing. The arcade mode had no endings, and this was the worst thing they could have done because they just introduced all of these new characters, and absolutely nowhere in the game do they tell you who these characters were. There was a story mode, but the story mode made you play pretty much entirely as Patroklos, and Patroklos is the worst protagonist in a video game ever. He is a complete monster, no one likes him, and playing through story mode as him was frustrating. Especially because halfway through story mode, you bump into Team Asia. Shiba, Natsu, Linghua, and Maxi, they're all on their own little quest, and you bump into them and you fight them, and it's clear they have a way more interesting story that is never told anywhere in the game. And I remember people trying to defend this, saying, oh, well, you can look it up on like a wiki, or it's in the art book. You just tossed out characters that people have grown to love for a decade for some new model swap, next generation newcomers, and you don't explain who they are or what they're doing here? Namco, are you stupid? This is frustrating, because I really, really, really like Natsu. I would love for Natsu to be in Soul Calibur 6, but this was a huge mistake, and people tried to like the game, and they tried to defend the game, and they gave me so much crap when I said the game is a garbage contraction pack, because it really did have less content than Soul Calibur 4 in terms of fighters, because there were a number of fighting styles that didn't have successors. There was no one that played like Zasalamel, and Zasalamel has a lot of fans. There was no one that played like Talim, and those were like fully different styles. Then you get into, there was no one who played like Rock, which, Astaroth was close to Rock, but Rock's style was pretty much gone. And that was the biggest problem. There were no Korean characters. And the Korean characters are very popular. A lot of people like Hwang Sung-yo, and Sung Mina is one of the most popular characters in the series, and they were completely gone. Like, I had a friend who was like, I can't play this game, there's no Sung Mina, and there's no Sung Mina successor. And Soul Calibur 5 was just a series of mistakes after mistakes. And so it makes sense that for Soul Calibur 6, they're like, let's just go back to Soul Calibur 1. Now, I'm hearing contradicting messages. Some people say it's just Soul Calibur 1. Others are saying it's going to be a retelling of 1 through 4, or 1 through 3 at least. But what I'm mostly hearing is that it is not retconning the other games, but rather is going to be an alternate universe take on them, so it sort of half retcons them. I don't know, I just want Natsu. That's the only thing I want from Soul Calibur 5, the rest of it we could just burn. I could easily see this also being an excuse to reduce the roster, because of course it takes a lot of effort to put all those characters in a game, especially because the Soul Calibur series is infamous for constantly changing its characters rather than just straight porting them over. It will be interesting to see how it plays out, because I would also like Hilda, and I would also like Talim. My main is Lizard Man, so I'll probably be fine. But it is good to hear Soul Calibur 6 is proceeding well. It's good to hear they've rolled the clock back and realized, maybe this whole Soul Calibur 5 thing was a mistake. And, apparently when you are on the character select screen, they actually say, welcome back to the stage of history retold. So, it's gonna be a thing. Soul Calibur 6 will definitely be a thing. It's good to hear there's a new Soul Calibur, and Namco needs to be thoroughly slapped for not giving the Soul series more respect, considering how much people love it. They have literally squandered what could have been a very big potential moneymaker for them, because they just keep screwing up their Soul Calibur games. They do not give them the same kind of love and budget that they give to their other games. But I am very happy to hear that that Soul Calibur is back, that we've got a new one, that it's looking gorgeous. Fingers crossed that Lizard Man is as amazing as he usually is. I really hope that... I doubt they'll cut Lizard Man, because I know the current guy in charge of the Soul series, like, Lizard Man's his favorite character, too. Enough of his favorite character that they actually gave him his real name, Aeon, in Soul Calibur 5. And I was like, that's really neat. The wings are dumb, but that's really neat. Well, less dumb than, like, some of his stupid frill-neck dinosaur thing. Japan likes frill-neck lizards a little bit too much. But yes, I am excited to see what Lizard Man looks like when he finally shows up. And I really hope he will. And yeah, Soul Calibur 6. Cannot wait. While we are here, before we go on to our last topic of the show after a break, there is currently a controversy going on with Overwatch, and I am having the darndest time sussing it out. Basically, Overwatch is getting really, really, really ban-happy, and it's getting a bit weird, because apparently it's being done via a vote system, and some people are, in fact, being banned from the game for playing the character they want to play. Amazingly, this is... Man, I am never playing Overwatch. This is the thing. I don't play Overwatch, and with people like this, I will never play Overwatch, because I'm a very character-centric person, and if I were to play the game, the character I want to play as is Tracer, and I would play nothing but Tracer. This is apparently very looked down upon in Overwatch. This is called being a one-trick, because you are supposed to actually constantly switch your character between in the middle of matches, actually. Every time you die, you have a chance to change your character. And so it's all about, like, creating team synergy and constantly changing characters and getting good with multiple characters. But some people, they're like, no, I'm just going to get really, really good with one character. Unfortunately, Overwatch decided to make it so only one person can play one character at a time. So you do get into these situations where people are like, I want to play the character I'm good at, but someone else is playing them because that's also the character they're good at. And that's causing lots of headbutting. And I've talked about this before, because, of course, having a team that consisted entirely of a single character wound up being really, really broken in Overwatch. And a friend of mine's like, yeah, well, you know, it's unbalanced to do it that way, so this is better. And all I can think is, oh, yeah, so mirror matches in fighting games are unbalanced too, right? You know, I think it's kind of dumb, and the game could have been balanced so that way a team of all of the same character wouldn't be horribly overpowering. I have a lot of criticisms of Overwatch. I really wish I could like that game, but man, I have so much beef with Overwatch. I need to stop now, because I know everyone loves Overwatch, especially now that it's trying to be the big esport with the Overwatch League. But again, a lot of bans are being handed out. And some people were, and I know a lot of people are going to point out that there was more to it than just this one case. Because there was this guy because most of this controversy started with someone who played Torbjorn, who said that he was being banned because he only played because he mained Torbjorn. That was not entirely the case. What it actually was if someone else on the team picked Torbjorn, he would just sit there and do nothing until they vacated that spot, and he wouldn't listen to anyone when they're like, dude, we need you to play someone other than Torbjorn. And as such, he was considered not a team player and got banned. However, there was also a report of someone who plays Mercy, who was told, dude, play another character, and they said, no, Mercy's my main, I like playing Mercy, and they also got banned for not being a team player. And this is definitely a controversial thing. Now, the big thing I looked into, because Overwatch is an online-only game, I was like, well, what does that mean if you get banned? And, you know, can you even play the game? Apparently, thank goodness, they're not that stupid. You can still play games in casual matches, it sounds like anyway. You are just banned from playing competitively, usually until the next season. They are not, like, usually permabans. But there's, like, a lot of bans being handed out. And one of the other, like, controversies, some people were saying people were being banned from Overwatch due to offensive posts on social media. But it is looking more like it's if you get caught on a YouTube video. But again, it is hard to say due to the fact that they're using a vote system. So there's just a lot of controversy going on with how Blizzard is trying to police Overwatch, and it does not seem to be working out too terribly well. I'm having a hard time getting a bead on the full details, as it is very easy for this to get blown out of proportion, and as I mentioned earlier, I have copious amounts of beef with Overwatch, a game I would like to play because it has fantastic character designs and visuals, but I am not playing Overwatch, and I will never play Overwatch. Not unless they make the game free to play, and even then I'm not sure if I'd play Overwatch. So I am slightly in the dark here. I did play it. Before anyone says, oh, you gotta give it a chance, I've played it on the free weekends. Not a fan. I actually enjoyed Paladins a little bit more. Although that's got its own issues now, because now they're introducing some pay-to-win mechanics that are pissing off their entire player base. Oh, such good times. I don't know if they canceled that or not, because they were like, oh no, these are just in beta. It's like, yeah, well, cancel your beta. It's a terrible idea. Don't do it. Anyway. It is now time to take a quick break, and then we will come back with what probably should have been one of the top stories of the day, but we will make it the closing story where we talk about the single-player gaming and Star Wars. And some real BS that shows just how full of crap some game journalists are. But until then, here is Never Be the Same by Camila Cabello here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you for listening, and please stay. That was Good Times by All Time Low here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and this is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So we are winding down the show with our final segment, and it is time to talk EA and Star Wars. So Star Wars is in kind of a bad place right now. There's copious amounts of fan backlash due to a multitude of issues with The Last Jedi. Star Wars toys are quickly being clearanced out. On top of that, the movie has been pulled from Chinese theaters, which is usually a huge source of income, but China really didn't like the movie. And on top of all that, there's Star Wars Battlefront 2 from EA, which got into massive trouble for its scam-tacular loot boxes, which were so terrible and so flagrantly pay to win that it actually started to annoy the U.S. government. Actually, quite a few governments got annoyed by it, as folks were saying, hey, this is kind of gambling. Especially because you were getting massive in-game advantages. Like, the way it worked was you would pay money to get packs of star cards, which give you different unlocks and weapons and upgrades. And the more cards you got, the higher your card level would be, and thus the stronger you would get and the more abilities and things you would have at your disposal. Someone who immediately went in and dumped an extra $100 on star cards would easily do far better than someone who just popped the game in that they bought. And that's the thing. It was a full-price boxed game with a season pass, with a collector's edition that costs quite a bit of money, and yet it was still using scammy free-to-play game tactics. So, yeah, that got a lot of backlash. They suspended microtransactions temporarily after Disney started breathing down their necks for the sheer overwhelming amount of bad publicity that their game had caused shortly after EA had secured exclusive licensing rights on Star Wars. Excuse me. And that's EA being EA again, because they freaking did the same thing with football, with the NFL. As if that wasn't enough. I don't think people are realizing the real story here. See, for the past couple years, we've been hearing all about how we need more women in the video game industry, more women making games. And two of the biggest names in women in gaming have been Amy Hennig, the writer for the very successful and popular Uncharted series, and Jade Raymond, the creator of Assassin's Creed. These are two very well-known, well-respected women in the video game industry, and a lot of people were wondering what happened to them, especially Jade Raymond. Well, believe it or not, the two of them had teamed up and were working on a single-player, story-driven Star Wars game. Well, it's pretty exciting, pretty interesting. I wonder what they're going to cook up. Well, we'll never find out because EA canceled it. Now, if the game was just not turning out well and, the project had to be scrapped before more money could be wasted on it, that would be one thing. However, this project had been in development for a couple of years. And you know why they scrapped it? You know the actual freaking reason why they scrapped it? Because they came in there and they said, yeah, but how do we microtransactions? How do you make more money from this game after it comes out? A game making all of its money off of the original boxed release? That's an old, outdated model. We need this game to constantly be sucking money out of players. And so the game was canceled. The game was canceled because it wasn't scamming the players. But what makes this really, really give me an eye twitch is the fact that now Amy Hennig has to go around and talk to all these different game magazines, give different interviews, and say, yeah, well, the single-player game model doesn't work anymore. You can't make money off of it because games are so expensive to make now, and video games need to constantly be making money through microtransactions. And the game journalists are just swallowing this whole. Let me get this straight. You just spent a couple of years of your life working on this big single-player game. It gets canceled, and now you have to act as an apologist for your scam-tacular company, telling people that, oh, well, there's no single-player market, and no one's really realizing what's going on here. Y'all are talking about, we need more women in the game industry making great games and stuff, and two of the biggest names in that are making a Star Wars game, and it gets canceled because not enough loot boxes, and y'all are just gonna let this slide? Y'all aren't going to say, wow, EA, what a bunch of scam artists you are. No wonder you are constantly voted the worst company in America. No wonder everyone hates you. No, you're just gonna let it slide. What I really love is how often this stupid narrative gets pushed that there's no market for single-player games. Single-player games are a dying breed. Single-player games are over because they're just so expensive to make. It's just not possible. The age of the single-player game is over. And, what's that other weird thing people are reporting on? Yes, the resurgence of the Japanese game industry. It's like, what the heck? Japan's making a real comeback. They're getting all these different, games of the year and stuff. Yeah, you know why? Because they're making single-player games. And they're making money off of their single-player games, and they aren't scamming people out of their money. The whole idea that single-player gaming is over is a manufactured construct of AAA game companies that don't want to just make money off of a single purchase. They want to constantly be siphoning money out of you, and so they want to switch to a quote-unquote games-as-a-service model. Because when they do that, when they're a games-as-a-service, that means they can sell loot boxes, they can sell microtransactions, they can sell something to get you constantly spending. Shoot, let's not forget that Activision actually patented a matchmaking scheme where they would constantly match you up against people who have the DLC they think you might want to try to sell you on it. So that way, you're not being ranked, you're not being made, you're not fighting people based on them being on similar skill levels or having good connections. Oh, no, it's about if they have things that you might want to try to tempt you into buying them. In your full-price boxed release, not a free-to-play game, full-price boxed release, not a mobile game, full-on console and PC game, AAA titles, and you just want to squeeze more money out of everyone, because of course that's what companies do. They all want to make money. The problem then, now they're trying to squeeze as much as they can out of you with these microtransactions to try to keep you to stay competitive and keep making money off of their game, and then next year they release the same game with a few tweaks, and, well, now you can't get that as DLC, so now you have to throw all the money you just spent on that game away. All those microtransactions are rendered pointless, because now there's a new, slightly better version, and everyone is going to be switching to that. So now you have to buy another full-price boxed game to get the slight upgrades from the previous release, and then they are going to milk you for microtransactions once again. That's what the AAA game industry in America wants. And this is why, quote unquote, single-player gaming is over, except no, it's not. I'm not sure if you're aware, but lots of gamers are comically antisocial. And they really like playing nice, happy, single-player games where they don't have to deal with the awfulness of other people. Because sometimes you just don't. You just don't want to deal. You want to sit there and you want to play your nice, enjoyable, single-player, story-driven game that you can enjoy and have fun with on your own time, without having to worry about paid subscriptions and internet connections and DLC to give you a competitive advantage. No, just a nice, single-player game. People like that. People like to buy that. And Japan is providing that, because Japan knows how to budget a game. Because that's what this is all about. It's about the budget. You're spending too much money. Yes, it's fantastic that Lara Croft has this amazing hair physics. Did you really need to spend all that money developing Tress FX hair? Really? Yes, the smoke coming off of your gun in Star Wars Battlefront is really nice. No one cares. Indeed, the games coming out of Japan do not have the same level of gorgeous, mind-blowing visual splendor. It's hard to even say that. Not in the same way. You know, they aren't pushing the hardware the same way. Instead, they rely more on artistic style and vision to provide something that is very pleasing to the eye, while also at the same time not necessarily pushing the system too terribly hard and keeping things within budget, because they're like, oh, we are going to sell this as a full-priced boxed release. We are hoping to sell 1 million copies and want to make our money back if we sell 1 million. That is the proper way to make a game. Not to spend an exorbitant amount of money on freaking hair physics and then needing to sell at least 3 million copies to break even, and then squeezing every last drop of money out of your consumers. But that is the narrative being pushed by this whole concept of single-player gaming is over. No, single-player gaming is eternal. And if you want to leave that behind, we are being left behind with it, and we will stay with the companies that actually provide us with nice, solid single-player experiences. Now, speaking personally, I prefer me some co-op. I love co-op games. But I like some single-player, too. I like some I like variety. And when someone tries to tell me that single-player in video games is over, they need to be slapped. They are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. And that is just a stone-cold fact. And that is why we've had one of the most interesting top 10 Game of the Year lists I've seen in a very long time, as many people are listing Japanese games towards the tops for 2017. Nier Automata, Super Mario Odyssey, Persona 5, all single player, all coming out of Japan because they understand how to budget a game. But what I love is that all of the normal winners, your Assassin's Creeds, your Mordor Shadow of War, your Battlefronts and Fields and Calls of the Duties, they did not win Game of the Year. They did not deserve to win Game of the Year. They have all become so astonishingly scammy and turned people off so hard that, people are like, I probably shouldn't give Game of the Year to that thing. Especially when you have other stories, such as how Destiny 2 is doing nothing but pissing off its players, to the point where they are hemorrhaging them. And now, of course, Warframe is taken their consumer base, because Warframe is apparently far less scammy. I really need to sit down and play some of that. Because, everything is turning into a scam. Everything is turning into AAA developers trying to scam as much money out of their consumers, and then they just, send their little lackeys out and say, oh, well, single-player gaming just isn't possible these days. BS. You have more people than ever buying more games than ever, easier, and you can make games easier than ever thanks to the fact that these new, more powerful systems let you slack off on a lot of the optimization you formerly needed. If you can't make money off of a single-player game, you are a hack. Good day. That was a little more vitriol than usual. The funny thing is, I wasn't even really paying that much attention in that Star Wars game. I heard about it, and my exact reaction was, oh, cool. I'll find out how that turns out. It was a passing interest, because, it could have been really cool, but I'm not that devoted that I'd be like, oh, I'll just blindly buy any Star Wars game. No, usually they need some vector graphics for me to really care about them. I love the old Star Wars arcade game. But yes, I think that'll wrap up our show for today. So thank you so much for listening to GameBabble Live here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. We will be back next week, next Tuesday, from noon to 3 p.m., but tune in early around 11:30, because that is when I will talk about how much I hate politics. I've got something planned for that. We're going to talk about politics and the empire next week, I think, if I remember that that's my topic. Don't get distracted by something else. So please stay tuned for that. Until then, thank you so much for listening to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. This is Jel signing off, and coming up next, we have Little Dark Age by MGMT here on 89.5 FM. Thank you so much for listening.